In the 2024 Pokemon Presents, the Pokemon Company announced that the next game, Pokemon Legends Z-A, would release sometime in 2025. Assuming that they finished Pokemon Legends Arceus in 2022 and immediately went to work on the next Legends game, it's still a 3-year game dev cycle. They haven't slowed down production or delayed the games at all. As far as I know, there's 2 teams working concurrently on the Pokemon games. The first team has been working on Pokemon Legends Z-A once Legends Arceus is finished, and the second team is likely working on Generation 10 now that Scarlet and Violet has finished. They're still operating under the same time frame for their release schedule. It was unpredictable that they would skip Generation 5 and go straight to Generation 6. At the same time, Pokemon Black and White and the sequels don't need a remake. Generation 6 needs a revamp and revitalization more than Generation 5 does. To be honest, Generation 4 didn't really need a remake either, evidenced by the fact that they barely tried to put new content into it. Game Freak isn't going to ruin Gen 5 just yet. In terms of positive things, I do hope they finally release AZ's Eternal Floette. Kalos was the only region that didn't have an extra game going for it soon after its release. It was benched to the side so that they could have a new mainline game for the 20th anniversary. It will be interesting to see how they flesh out the lore of AZ and Mega Evolution since they teased its return. The Pokemon Company always tries to surprise its fans. In terms of Game Freak, there are 2 constants in their behavior. They will go out of their way to surprise the fans, and there will always be profit-driven decisions. Back in Pokemon Black and White, people thought there'd be a Pokemon Grey version, following the model of Pokemon Emerald and Pokemon Platinum. But instead of Pokemon Grey, they went for 2 sequels, Black 2 and White 2. In Pokemon X and Y, people anticipated a Pokemon Z version, but they skipped it entirely at the time. They didn't even do sequels for Pokemon X and Y like they did for Pokemon Black and White. Pokemon Sun and Moon, we expected a 3rd version or a sequel, but instead we had something like a compromised remake. If you wanted the game of Alola with the story but compromised content, you'd play the original Sun and Moon. If you wanted the extra content but the story itself is compromised, you'd play Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. And they made these exactly a year after the originals came out. Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon aren't really like the ultimate 3rd versions of the games because they made 2 versions of this game when one would have sufficed. Compared to Pokemon Emerald and Pokemon Platinum, the 3rd versions for their respective generations, those games are the definitive and superior ways to experience the Hoenn and Sinnoh regions. Pokemon Sword and Shield, they started doing DLC for both versions of the games, mind you. There was never a precedent for paid DLC in Pokemon games before this, so it surprises the fans, but it also makes them more money than the 3rd version model. Game Freak does try to surprise their fans, but their decisions will also be financially lucrative. They are a business after all. In Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, they also did DLC again. They had a similar model in splitting the release of the DLC into 2 parts. The first part of the DLC is reasonably short, as seen in the Isle of Armor in Pokemon Sword and Shield and the Teal Mask in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, whereas the second part of the DLC has more substantial content and features included relative to the first part, as seen in the Crown Tundra in Sword and Shield and Indigo Disk in Scarlet and Violet. Pokemon Black and White was the one prominent time where the Pokemon Company noticeably lost sales on the games. The consumers voted with their wallets and actually hurt Pokemon's bottom line. Consequently, the next games had even less content and so much Generation 1 pandering. Ever since Pokemon X and Y, once you beat the league, there's not much post-game. What is considered post-game content largely revolves around catching the legendary Pokemon from previous games. You can definitely make the argument that a GBA cartridge has more content in a modern Pokemon Switch game. So why did Game Freak prioritize making Pokemon Legends Z-A rather than a Generation 5 game? Remaking Generation 5 could be seen as a financial risk, based on the numbers of the original games. And on top of that, no one was expecting to revisit the Generation 6 games so soon. I don't think anyone predicted that we would return to the Kalos region in Pokemon Legends Z-A. So it has both the surprise factor and it has a monetary incentive because Pokemon Legends Arceus was financially successful relative to the other Pokemon Switch games. It didn't flop in terms of sales. After Pokemon Sword and Shield, people were clamoring for Gen 4 remakes. The Pokemon fans thought that Game Freak would make proper modernized Generation 4 remakes in the style of Heart Gold and Soul Silver and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. We expected Game Freak to create remakes that have effort put into them. They ended up making the low-effort atrocity that is BDSP. Just when people thought they couldn't make a Pokemon game worse or more controversial than Sword and Shield, they went lower with BDSP. Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl is not a love letter to the fans. That game is not a labor of love. BDSP is the most bare minimum product they have pumped out. Chibi graphics, barely any new content, and they stripped some content from the games. It was glitchy and needed a large update patch on release.
Fix the issues. Don't just reskin them and assume we'll be blinded by nostalgia.
They shipped the games with the exact same bugs from the original DS games made more than 10 years ago that were fixed in a vastly superior game. Quality control be damned. The Pokemon Company 100% pays attention to the fans. They may not listen to the Pokemon community's demands, but they definitely pay attention to the online discourse surrounding Pokemon, and they monitor what becomes popular. Before I saw the trailer for Pokemon Legends Z-A, I didn't think we were going to get a Generation 6 game, but I did think that Game Freak was gonna try to do something completely different to what we expect. That's how they consistently operate. Game Freak was successful in subverting the fan expectations with Pokemon Legends Z-A. You might wonder, why might the Pokemon Company go out of their way to surprise their fans? Why is it so important to surprise people? Well, in order to seduce someone, you have to surprise them. You cannot seduce someone without surprising them. The element of surprise is absolutely essential, because if you can surprise someone, you can catch them in a moment of weakness, at least gain a second where they're vulnerable. Never ever underestimate the power of surprise. I would argue being able to surprise people is part of why Pokemon has been so successful as a media franchise thus far. The trailer for Pokemon Z-A has no substance. There's no gameplay footage to discuss. You can speculate, but there's no hard evidence to work with. Over the years, the Pokemon Company has increasingly become tight-lipped about the information they release about their games. They're actively withholding information from the fans so that they can effectively deceive and surprise them. Knowledge is power. The less knowledge the fans have about the games, the less power they have. For this reason, I love looking at Pokemon leaks and spoilers. Personally, I want to be spoiled on the games. I want to know all the story spoilers and the spoilers on the new Pokemon designs. I don't want to be surprised, because not all surprises are pleasant. I want to have all the information possible, so that I can make an informed decision on whether or not I should buy or play a Pokemon game. It is our moral duty to be a critical consumer, and if you're not sure on whether to get a game or not, wait for the hype to pass and read reviews on it. Overall, in regards to Pokemon Legends Z-A, I feel cautiously optimistic, but cannot say for certain until the game is fully released. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos related to Pokemon. Write down your thoughts on Pokemon Legends Z-A in the comments, and thank you for watching.